Hello and welcome to this wonderful, lovely session where we're going to be talking about a number of different topics, mainly focusing around entrepreneurship and the pension schemes. So, as we all know, we're currently living long and prosperous, happy, active post-life lives. But therefore, it's so important to plan your retirement properly. The question is pension really worth it? Or should we be putting our money into property? What are the different types of pension schemes? And how can we make the most of our pension? And what can we do to make our pension work a little bit better? Some of these hot questions are some of the things that we're going to be exploring today, and to shed light on post-effective retirement planning. So some of the focal points for today will be a lot of entrepreneurs, as we know, don't even have a pension. What does that mean for them? Is there an alternative to pension? Is our pension pot protected, or can we lose our money? And when is it too late, or is it too late to start a pension? Just to give a little bit of introduction to myself, my name is Ryan Jatanga, also known as RJ. I'm a presenter on TV and radio. I'm mainly on the BBC. And yeah, today I will be moderating with a whole bunch of panelists, including Mr. Vinay Tana, who's a managing partner at Garner
and Hancock.
Garner and Hancock. Thank you very much. And then we've got Mr. Raj Kataria. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh, I don't know what that was, but here we go. Who's Trust Director at Keystone Trust. Thank you very much for joining us. We've also got Arya Tanwa, founder and CEO of Brickworks. Apologies if I said your name wrong. And finally, we've got Mr. Paul Aurora, who is a financial advisor at Crystal Financial Solutions. So let's crack on. I want to start with Mr. Paul Aurora.
Hi.
What are your views and opinions on everything that has been discussed today?
I mean, I would be biased because I work in the investment side of things, but I genuinely believe people need to be putting money away for retirement. Why should they be putting money away for retirement? Because first of all, immediate tax relief. So any contributions they make, they will get money back from the taxman. Let me ask you, how frequently has the taxman given you money back? So that's a question worth posing. Two, people are living longer, as you said at the beginning, and therefore, how are they going to accumulate enough wealth to provide an income? And again, if they accumulate their wealth within a pension fund, what grows in the pension fund actually grows out of their estate for inheritance tax purposes. So it's another quick way of passing on wealth to your beneficiaries without having to give it away for the taxman. So the way I see my job, the way I see what I do for my client is about increasing their wealth and reducing their tax. I hope that sort of gives you a brief idea of where I'm from.
Excellent. And Arya, as like a founder and a CEO of Future Bricks, sorry. Apologies. Where do you kind of stand on this topic?
I think I was just speaking to Paul, and I think it's all about diversification, spreading it across property, spreading it across pension. You never put all your eggs in one basket. That's just my personal opinion. And being an entrepreneur myself, I'm also interested in the SaaS product, which I was just talking to Paul about. So yes, I mean, so just to give a little bit background of, what the agenda that I'm bringing to table is, so we basically are a peer-to-peer lending platform for asset-backed investments. So we lend to small and medium-sized housing projects which require funding. At the same time, retail investors can invest in these projects. Minimum investment is £500. They get up to 10% gross interest per annum. Of course, capital at risk, and this is not covered by financial compensation scheme. One of the reasons why we have a lot of retired retail investors on our platform, pensioners, is because the loan term of these investments is 6 to 12 months. So they're not committing, a further 5 to 10 years. So this product can be attractive. And as I mentioned, you can also invest on our platform via SaaS, SIP, IFISA in the future. So basically, on a P2P asset-backed lending platform, you can actually use a pension to invest and get, double-digit interest. So I think it's all about using the best tools that you can, like Paul mentioned, like how do you maximize efficiency with your funds? Yeah.
Excellent. And you mentioned a few different options there, including one of them was like SaaS, and you listed off a few different options. If you can just give like a one-liner just to the quick differences between a couple of them, just for everybody to understand.
These are just a tax. I think Paul probably will be the right person when it comes to SIP and SAP. I'll leave that to Paul. But
at the end of the day, these are just tax wrappers. I mean, a SaaS is mainly purchasing, is actually putting your own commercial property within a pension fund. A SIP is just a pension wrapper where you can invest in different funds, or actually you can still invest in a property through a SIP as well. But the objective really is it's not about the wrapper, it's about the tax efficiency that's the most important. If you're looking for immediate growth, a pension will offer you immediate growth, and and for an entrepreneur or someone that wants a successful business and they decide to buy their own commercial property, well, how good would it be that your property sits outside of your estate for inheritance tax and it actually forms part of your own pension? So yeah, that's what it really. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, and it's all about using the tools, that's at your disposal, and being aware of them. I think is the most important thing. Like, people are still not aware of, product like asset-backed lending, for example, which is like average loan term is 12 months. And same with the SIP and SaaS, what you can do with it. So I think number one is the awareness, and then diversification, in my opinion.
Excellent. At this point, I'm just going to bring in Vinayji and just get his views and thoughts on it.
So Rajan, I'm afraid I'm going to be the Mr. Doom and Gloom here. I've been litigation for 20 years, and I have seen disputes after there is inheritance, there's inheritance money, and there's death where there is no real thought that has gone through the planning stage. So I'm going to deal with issues concerning things that are outside the pension. Particularly, a lot of Indians want to keep their money in bricks and mortar, but they also want to somehow or other want to give it away. And I want to go through some of the tricks and tips that you need to really consider before you're giving away your assets to try and mitigate tax. I will say there are three enemies in this world. The first is the tax man. The second is creditors, people who are after you, and thirdly, divorce. Divorce, I don't mean just matrimonial divorce, but also disputes. You can get disputes within families, you get disputes outside of families, and to avoid that situation, good thinking, good planning. But what I deal with is the aftermath, and that's why I'm going to give you a bit more insight as to the things that you could think about whilst you're planning. And in fact, although we're saying pensions are a great place to put money in, a lot of people and majority of the assets are outside pensions. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how to deal with, for example, children getting married, what the risk factor is, and all of those things which our community particularly think about either when they start getting a little bit older or they start getting a little bit unwell. All of those things suddenly come into mind, and they, unfortunately, Rajan, they take a knee-jerk reaction. And the first thing they want to do is give it away. And I want to deal with that.
Excellent. And finally, we just want to do a quick introduction to Mr. Raj Kataria, who you may have heard both points, and I could see you leaning in, wanting to speak. So just give us your views and opinions.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's spoken really well. I think that pensions play a really key role in retirement planning. I think the diversification point is extremely valid. And I think the aftermath of wanting to give assets away too fast, too quickly, because the tax man's going to grab the assets, is probably not a good thing as well. I think with clients that I'm seeing, that the one thing they need to understand is what's already been said, their options. We've grown up, we're a bit tunnel vision in what we've done and what we know, so we only continue to do that. We don't worry so much about tax, and then when all of a sudden tax shoots us and says we need to take X amount from you because that's what inheritance tax says, we panic. I think the key for any client is to have very good advisor or advisors on board. I think to be open ears to what others have got to say. Just because something's been done for 10 years, it doesn't mean it's always the right thing to continue to do. And so, yeah, at Keystone, we work with our advisors. We specialize in creating trusts and running trusts as well for families, which is it's not a new concept, but for Indians, it certainly is, and it's very topical as well. But yeah, I think I would say that what I've learned is look at what options are available, be open-minded, and analyze what's in front of you. But don't be afraid to pay taxation. Just pay the most efficient taxation possible. Planning is good, but don't do something you're going to regret just because you're running from the tax man, or because your children are driving you to do something. So that's quite an important point, that when I see a client, it's to remind them it's their money, they've worked hard. And my favorite tip of any option available is to spend your money. Spending your money is free of inheritance tax. It puts a smile on your face. It decreases your stress, and you live longer. So it's a win-win situation. And of course, plan properly as well. But yeah, I see clients forgetting that one tip.
I absolutely love that. So I'm just going to quickly go back to Mr. Paul Arora and just say, in your opinion, what does it mean if someone has no pension at all? And one of the key questions is just, is it ever too late to take out a pension?
If no one has a pension at all, I mean, if you look at the working population, and if you look at the number of people who are going into retirement, and if you just look at the level of state pension, I mean, state pensions are around £175 a week. Now, if I asked you to take away your day-to-day expenditure and think about all those things that you'll continue to pay, could you live on the state pension? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that will be no. And then others will say, well, actually, I've got property income, I've got rental income. I mean, everybody's at a different stage in their life. I mean, how can I put it? I mean, to me, you've got to, it's all about a balancing act. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as was said earlier on. You've got to balance your strategies, and pension is just one way of doing it. And just going on to the point about trusts and stuff, I genuinely believe inheritance tax is a voluntary tax, because it is a voluntary tax, because actually you can mitigate against it, or mitigate a lot of it away, if you just sit down with the right people to help guide you through it. And I will always use the pension as one of the best ways to not only build up a fund for your income for retirement, because again, since October 2015, the rules around pension changed, which means you can draw down on your pension as much as you want or as little as you want. Whereas in the past, you built up your fund for retirement, you took out your tax-free cash, and with the remaining balance, which is 75%, because you take 25% out, you would have had to have bought an income, and that income was bought for the rest of your life. And if you had a spouse, if you died, your spouse got it. And when your spouse died, your pension died with you. Well, those rules don't apply anymore. They're gone. They went since October 2015. The first thing that happened is any money accumulating in the pension fund sits outside of the estate for inheritance tax. And I really believe that's the big part about it. As a person that takes income, well, at the moment, you can take your income from 55 onwards. So you can take 25% out tax-free. You could take it in one go, or you could phase it. But with the balance of the fund, you can leave it in there to grow. And because people are living longer, you need to have an advisor to help you grow that money in retirement. Does that make sense? So by growing that money in retirement, you can then choose to take as little as you want or as much as you want to live on. But the good news is if, well, it's not good news if you die, but the good news for your beneficiaries is if anything happens to you, that pot goes on to your spouse or your partner, And then when your partner passes away, you could actually leave that money on to your children, and as long as it's your direct descendants, that money can basically stay in generations for year on year on year and still grow. So I don't know if that answers the question that you sort of posed to me, but it's never, and again, it's never too late to start accumulating for retirement, because you can nowadays, if you look at the average person, you might work 30 years, but you could actually live for 40 years in retirement. And the best example I can give of that is my father. He actually earned more in retirement than he did when he was working, because of the time he survived in his retirement. He passed away at 92 and retired at the age of 56, 57. And that's what people need to think of. Age does not improve with health. We get older and we become sicker, and we need to make sure we've got the capability of supporting ourselves in retirement. Our community likes to rely on our children, but I know there's a whole group of children that are coming through that don't necessarily want to be around their parents. And let's be quite honest, they want their own independence. They want their own freedoms. Yeah. So you've got to think about and be a bit selfish and think about, well, what do I need? And like Raj said earlier, one of the best examples that he's given me is elderly people should look to start spending their money and enjoy it and have a smile on their face. And I think that's what and a pension can play part of that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I'm at this point, I'm just going to come to Mr. Vinay and just get his views and opinions on this. And if you don't agree on whatever level, what are the alternatives to what Mr. Paul's saying?
So one of the things that we find, and Paul is correct when he says that pension is a good place to put money, it's safe, and it also avoids this tendency to try and give things away because they're not tax efficient, because ultimately you have it in a tax efficient wrapper. So a lot of people have these assets which are outside the pension, and one of the things I want to talk about is passing property during lifetime. And one of the things that a lot of Indians want to do is pass it to their children. And I would just warn them on two points. One is that children get married and their spouses have effectively an interest in that asset. Now, you can mitigate that by doing a prenuptial agreement. And I do many prenuptial agreements. I've written a book on prenuptial agreements. And people think, are they effective? And the absolute resounding answer to that is yes, and more so than ever before. And indeed, they're getting stronger by the day as the cases come through, which show that these prenuptial agreements do stand up in court, and they are very valuable, efficient ways of controlling assets which go outside of the family. So one of the things that you notice with Indians, they think, well, actually, I'm going to give away the asset, but for some way, I'm going to try and use the asset if I need it. Well, disabuse yourself of that idea, because of course you cannot give away an asset and then have benefit of that asset. The taxman does not like it. He does not like the fact that you may live in that property, you may benefit somehow indirectly. So all of those notions that Indians have of somehow giving it away but holding on to it is very, very difficult to do. So one of the things I always say is obviously have a will, which obviously solicitors will always say, have a lasting power of attorney, all solicitors say that, but also have one other interesting thing, which is called a letter of wishes. You may wish to actually write a letter with your will to explain what you have done and why you've done it. I have used these letter of wishes in litigation cases where perhaps the money hasn't gone to the places the way you would expect the money to go to, or the assets. So these are things that are important. The other thing I would also say, and this is something perhaps people forget, is when you do give away your money, there are, and Raj will probably touch upon this, and I'm not going to deal with this, what I'm going to say is deal with trust, is to actually have the ability to separate yourself from the asset in a tax efficient way. But of course, Indians think for some reason trusts are also something that's to be scared of. I know, and I'm sure Roger's going to explain this, and it isn't. It's something that you can approach. They're very easy, and the ones that people know, of course, are very easy ones. They're called trustees. You can just simply divide the property in accordance with a very simple trust deed, and you can still have effectively a say in that property, despite the fact that that property might belong to your son or daughter. you can have an interest in that property which can come back to you. It's not the most tax efficient way, but there are ways of doing it so that you can have your cake and eat it. But one of the things that everyone has said is the taxman isn't the enemy. It's actually being careful as to what you want to do with your money. You will need that cash. If it's not in a pension, you will need it. And you cannot call upon it. Once you gift that property, you cannot ask for it back. So there's a whole host of issues. And, you know, gifting can be expensive. People say, well, actually, I'm just going to gift it to my children. You know, you have to pay capital gains tax on that. You know, it's not as easy as simply gifting property to get rid of it away from the taxman. So I always say, when you're looking at things, when you're planning things, firstly, obviously use an expert, use a professional, but also think about what you need in your time. You will need, one of the absolute issues that I have is I don't want to pay for nursing home care. I want to give away my property so that nobody can call upon nursing home fees. That is not the way to do it, because if you give away your property, the first thing that will be asked for, where is your property? And it will be treated as if you still got it. And this, people don't realize this. Well, giving away property to mitigate nursing home fees, that is not the way that you should do this, because ultimately it'll be treated as if you've got it. These are sort of what I call misconceptions, which people have to be very wary of.
Excellent. And I think that kind of transitions very nicely into us speaking to Raj, just to fill in a few bits which Vinay mentioned. So if I can get you just to continue the conversation, please.
Yeah, I think Vinay touched on a really good point with regards to the care home fees. I've seen a lot of trusts come across my desk where the first thing I've said is, why have you done this? I think it goes to clients having advisors that they don't actually, they've not, the new advisor they keep meeting, and an advisor gives them the golden solution. So for example, you mean I can give my property away and still keep the rental income? Well, yes, you can. And they haven't really thought that actually that isn't the case. Or yes, you can protect your home from care home fees. So we see these particular solutions out in the market that I think are a disaster. And clients are seeing advisors and doing certain things which they shouldn't be doing. I think the point is, if it's too good to be true, you shouldn't do it. For starters, you should go and get good advice from reputable people, look at their qualifications, and also do your own research at the same time. The one thing that Vinay said about the putting your home into trust or and your family home and trying to avoid care home fees, there are tax implications in whatever you do. If you're doing something for inheritance tax, there's a knock-on effect on capital gains tax, there's a knock-on effect on income tax, and also there's a knock-on effect on stamp duty to some extent, which is very forgotten about. So yes, we're seeing a lot of gifting. Trusts do play a very effective role in gifting. I think there are a lot of misconceptions around trust, both in terms of knowledge, but also just because, you know, people have heard stories, and everyone, especially Indians, we love a good story, don't we? We love telling everyone a good story. And we hear about stories about Amitabh Bachchan having trust in Panama, and you think of the word trust and you bring it into the UK. But no, I think planning, as Paul said, IHT planning it can be done very effectively, and inheritance tax is a voluntary tax. The earlier you plan, the safer it is, and I think the word is safe. The safer it is to start, saving inheritance tax. And we keep going back to the fact that as long as you know your options, whether it's pensions, whether it's other investments, whether it's property, whatever it is, you should have open eyes. You should understand all the options available to you. And you need to be aware of what somebody's telling you and why they're telling you what they're telling you. Is that because it's their profession? What is the alternative? And that's a very good question to ask anyone. Ultimately, what is your objective and your goal? Do not sacrifice that for a tax saving. Do not sacrifice your standard of living because you think the revenue might take your money. Look, you need to, as a client, you have your path in life. You need to keep going on that path, and your advisor will allow you to know your options and when is the best and the right time to do certain things. And I think the key thing is just having good advice around you.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. And I think at this point, obviously we've spoke about assets and money and property And I'd just like to bring in Aryaji and just get her opinion on all of this.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the point, knowing that, what is your appetite as an investor, especially if you're towards, in a retirement sort of a position. So you're looking for shorter term investment, you're probably looking for like low risk. So it's important that they can do the due diligence. For example, at FutureBricks, we only do first charge projects. Loan to values are capped at 70%. In the pandemic, it was 65%. Would take debentures, PGs of the directors, and obviously with that full-fledged underwriting team. So, and loan term would be on average like 12 months, 6 months. We even had projects for 3 months, and kind of a double-digit interest. So knowing where to invest, knowing your appetite, and what is the reason for generating that income. That is like, I think, the most important bit. And then using tools such as like SIP and SAS to kind of make these sort of investments. And obviously to be mindful that the capital is at risk. But it's to understand the purpose, understand the risk appetite, and then making your due diligence, and and obviously talking to experts and using different tools to make an investment or generate that passive income, that hassle-free income.
Excellent. And one of the key questions, and it may seem like an obvious question to you lot, but one of the key questions that comes up quite often when talking about pensions is around the whole protection of it. And at this point, I'd just like to bring Paul Aurora back and just ask around the whole protection around pensions. And key question, is there any way you could potentially lose any of it?
Right. I mean, you've got the, it's just gone off the top of my head because I was thinking about it, but you've got the pension protection schemes that are around. Right. It all goes back to risk. Yeah. I mean, for you to physically lose all your money with an investment firm, you'd have to make some really poor decisions, and a lot of things would have to go wrong for you to actually lose your money. And to date, I've never seen a pension firm go under, because even if a pension company was to go out of business, or an investment manager was to go out of business, those companies tend to get taken over by other firms. Does that make sense? I mean, I know, for example, this leads on to, you look at a lot of insurance companies that have disappeared in the marketplace, such as Abbey Life, Sun Life of Canada, some of these companies that have disappeared, but their funds have actually just been closed, and they've moved on to different firms that are looking after their money. But to actually physically lose money, you'd have to be taking some really poor investment decisions, i.e. where you invest. You decide to, in the past, you hear the stories of people investing in pensions in antiques, or where you've got these pension scammers where, monies go overseas. That's how you lose money. What you need to do is make sure you sit down with a reputable firm that takes you through a risk profiling, to understand your risk appetite, talks about the different investment strategies that are available to you on how to grow your money over time. I hope that makes sense. And I think the panel will agree with me. That's what it's all down to. Everything just leads back to professional financial advice. That's all it is. It's talking to the right people and understanding what your short, medium, long-term goals are, and how we fit in as a group of people to help your money grow over time.
Excellent. So as we know, time is running very, very short for us. So if I can actually ask each one of you, starting with Vinayji, just to give like a top liner and kind of like the key points to think about. And just, if you had to sum it down to maybe 1 to 3 points, what would your kind of key points be?
Protect your money from lawyers. They're horrible people, and you should stay away from them. But in serious notes, this is the problem. When you come to people like us where things have gone terribly wrong, it's because you haven't planned ahead. So litigation is when you have a dispute, or you are trying to avoid disputes after death. The whole purpose is to have your planning so that actually none of those disputes happen. And you know as well as I do, Indian families are very close, but they're also very, very fragile and fractious. And so you have a situation where people expect a lot from the inheritance planning of someone passing away, and it doesn't pan out. And there are lots and lots of disputes. And I just want to go through 3 points about avoiding disputes. One is to be crystal clear in your wishes. So obviously a will, a letter of wishes, and speak to your family. Secondly, and this is really important, is giving away assets during lifetime is a good thing, but it has to be on the basis that you effectively need it, and you're not going to be putting your spouse or indeed others in jeopardy. And that's important. And as I think Paul said, you're going to live a very, very long life, and you've got to plan ahead for that very long life. And the third point is in my experience of 20 years, litigation or people who come to lawyers after the event really only happens when one really important thing happens in their lives. They haven't thought through issues. They think that.
Oh, have we lost him?
And I always say down both professionals and, more importantly, with your family.
Sorry, I think you cut off at one point. Could you just say the last bit of the third point?
My final point is to talk to both professionals and with your family simultaneously.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I'm now going to move on to Raj. If you can give your last few kind of key points for people to think about, please.
Yeah, I think that it's important to pick or have good advice around you, to plan early. One thing I would say with trust, which I've experienced in the last 10 years, is that there are very effective structures as long as they've been created well, and you get the advice with it at the same time. And I do think that the one thing is you do really get what you pay for. With regards to advice, being Indians, we're obviously a bit conscious of how much we're spending, but if you spend money well on good advice, you will always be taken care of by your advisors. There are solutions out there. The Revenue is a fantastic place to get information as well. So be careful on what you read, but read the right resources out there. And don't be afraid to challenge your advisors on what they say. Yeah, I think that's the key thing I would say to any client that I would certainly say.
Excellent. And next of all, if I can get Aria just to give your key points, please.
I think similar points as I've been mentioning. I think diversification is important, understanding your risk appetite, doing your due diligence, and using the tools available, which Paul was going, so which kind of goes hand in hand. So that's the most important thing, and understanding that it's the disposable income that you're investing into the property and creating an income that you would like.
Excellent. And finally, we're going to end with Paul.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, for me, I would say if you're not in a pension scheme, get into one, especially if you've got an employer scheme available to you, because your employer has to contribute to it. That's free money. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're an entrepreneur that genuinely believes their business is going to be a success, start paying into your pension now, because you can then use your allowances to carry forward, which is actually pay in the current year and go back 4 years and make up for lost contributions. And you can only make up for lost contributions if you started a pension 4 years ago. Yeah. At the same time, if you like the taxman, carry on as you are. If you don't like the taxman, you need to book an appointment to see one of the professionals on this panel to start helping you to mitigate tax and increase your wealth. That's how I'm going to leave it.
Excellent. So once again, I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for being part of this discussion. And thank you for everybody for joining today.